From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports podcast.
The fastest growing entertainment phenomenon of this generation.
I, Prophet of Esports, joined today by my friend and co-host William Collis.
Yeah, we got the book of esports out. It's a big deal.
So everyone knows me as the Prophet and William as the Professor. As the Prophet of Esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner, YouGov, offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports after show live stream / it's our weekly news live stream because we end up doing all news on this live stream. For those of you who are new here, what we do here is we cover all kinds of esports industry topics and news. We look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. But best of all, we get to do it live with you guys, which makes it that much more exciting and that much more interesting. So if you're watching, if you're new here, if you're not new here, we encourage you guys to get involved, to ask questions, to get in our faces. It makes it that much more interesting and that much more fun. Also, just a quick reminder, if you haven't yet told a friend about the live stream, make sure you do. Because the more the merrier. And also make sure to go check out businessofesports.shop. Get yourself some Business of Esports merch. There's socks, there's shirts, there's lots of fun stuff. We have Jimmy Mondel, who is
oh no,
who's two of them here.
The dimensions are fragmenting.
The metaverse is opening. No.
Welcome everyone, Lindsay, Jimmy, William, Jeff. Thank you guys for all being here. How is everyone?
Love to be here. It's always a pleasure.
How is everyone?
Good.
It's been a busy week.
It's a busy week. I feel like everyone has that same feeling. Mm-hmm. August is supposed to be slow, not been slow at all.
Not at all.
Owen says, good evening, everyone. Robert, great to see you here. Owen, great to see you here. Wade,
thanks for the wave.
Weekly Esports Fix. Hi, all. Wade, great to have you back.
Hey, Wade.
So much to talk about this. I feel like the chat, so we have like a chat between the six of us, and this week, like particularly, I felt like there was a lot of news.
There was a lot of news. Should we start with maybe the most important? I'm going to come to the podcast, but we got it. This is just too important.
Go for it.
We have to share this immediately. It's Andrew Cuomo accepts leadership position at Activision Blizzard. No, okay, never mind. Too soon. Okay, not actual news for anyone who's watching. That was not actual news. Robert says, any thoughts on streaming this on Clubhouse / Twitch? Robert, we did used to do a Friday Clubhouse, and the Clubhouse has, I think, not done as well as they had hoped, and it was not as good as we had hoped, and so we stopped doing Friday streams on Clubhouse, but Twitch is coming, and so that is literally any week now. You can expect something on Twitch, probably this stream, but maybe also something else. So definitely we will be putting more content on Twitch. If you have suggestions for Clubhouse and maybe how to make like a good format work there, I'm open to it. But I feel like the audience there is dwindling, but I'm not sure. Great podcast this week, guys. Just a teaser, sneak peek. We had Ian Prue, who is the CEO of 1047 Games. And for gamers in the chat, 1047 Games, their big game right now is, well, their only game is Splitgate, which is seeing a massive resurgence. One of the few examples of games that was hot for like a very short period of time, then totally went away, and that was really hot all over again. And so fascinating story to hear. Lot of insight into sort of how to make a free-to-play game and what works and what doesn't work. And so highly recommend tuning into that tomorrow. Ian, really great guy. And Splitgate, maybe I will say, and Jimmy Mondel, I know you know Ian personally as well, but like maybe the most innovative game in the shooter genre we've seen 5 years at least. The last 5 years at least, maybe 10. Trying to think, I can't think of anything more.
They just took
innovation.
a really large leap in trusting their player base with the movement and like portals. You're using portals to be able to move around and play this FPS title, which is basically an arena FPS title like Halo, but now with insane movement that once you get to a certain level of player, it just doesn't make sense anymore. They're doing things you'd never be able to explain, but people are having a lot of fun with it, and it completely blew up on TikTok. Yeah, and it went from being nothing to blowing up to over. I think they have 350,000 followers on Twitter alone. It's ridiculous.
I'll spoil it a bit. We talked a little bit about like the mythos around their team in the early, like 2 years ago when it first blew up, because a lot of the talk was like, oh my god, it's 4 guys who made this game. And he sort of debunked that a little bit. He was like, well, actually, it's like we were 30 people, but but there was a lot of this like, oh my god, I can't believe 4 guys made this. And it is a fascinating story.
I'm still going to tell people it was 4 guys. So fake
yeah,
news.
it's a much more fun story in 4 guys. I will also just tease the couple of stories that we covered on the podcast. Happy to dive into them here if anyone in the chat wants to, or any of you guys want to. The first being Dr. Disrespect starting a game development studio. Obviously, Ian, as a CEO of a game development studio, had interesting insight into the doc's take on this. Actually, I will have one question for all you guys, but I will just tease the second story that we covered, which was Avia Games raising $40 million to diversify mobile skill-based gaming. And basically they're building a competitor to Skills, which is a lot of money to have raised. And, in the context of Skills getting beaten up in the public markets, there was an interesting conversation there as well. Any of you guys want to dive into either of those? Or should I ask my Dr. Disrespect question to all of you?
Ask your question. I'm sure that'll
Yeah,
prompt
let's
the
do that.
conversation.
Yeah.
So I asked the same question on the podcast, so you guys will have to tune into the podcast to hear Ian's answer and Jimmy B's answer. But do you think the doc going and making games is too big of a risk for his brand? And let me just explain. In other words, if Doc makes a movie, okay, and the movie sucks, no one really cares, right? The doc as a brand survives. The doc stream survives. He's still the 2-time. He's still like tremendous champion gamer. His movie, no matter how bad it is, will probably have a cult following. But if he makes a bad game, does he recover from that? Like, can you recover from that? Because he talks all about how he's a great level designer and how, Warzone sucks for this reason and PUBG sucks for that reason. And like, he's very critical of other games. Does he have too much to lose here making games?
I mean, it's a big risk because, first of all, like, just because you play games a lot doesn't necessarily mean you're qualified to make games, right? Now, I'm not saying it doesn't help, right? Like, I think most people who make games also play a lot of games, but it's a very different skill set. And in some sense, I think it's more the skill set of the critic, right? Or the connoisseur than the artist or the artiste, right? So there's a big risk involved. But just to drill in a little, I don't know, Paul, I think he's fine either way, because this is the advantage of this sort of personality and character he is. He's almost a villain, right? Like, I mean, he's not a villain because, you kind of but he sort of plays a foil role to the industry. So in the same way, if the movie he makes is bad, he'd be able to pass it off. Imagine if the game he makes is bad and he's like, oh, Doc pulls it over the industry, making worst game ever. Everyone play my bronze tier game. I think he could play it off. So I think the bigger risk is not to his brand, because anytime I think he pursues a brand extension, obviously there's damage risk, but I think also as an extension, the risk to the core brand is limited. I think the bigger question is just, what's he committing to this? Because what can sink him is finance, resources, and time, right? If he stops focusing on streaming, if he puts a lot of his wealth, if he puts a lot of his connections and network into this and it's a bad game, I think that's the bigger risk for him, an overinvestment of his personal capital into this, rather than, say, his brand itself. Because I think his brand is unique in that it survives bumps.
Now, my guess is he's going to raise outside capital if he hasn't already. And I also think...
Now, wasn't there something in the article, sorry to cut you off, about that it being more like indie games, indie studios type thing?
It's influencer focused. So in other words, he's going to rope in influencers who will help make the games, market the games. They're going to help in all aspect of the life cycle. So he's going to rope in other influencers, not just himself. And that's sort of their angle. This is all sort of influencer built.
Business standpoint, I mean, it's very interesting. I want to give you guys credit, this podcast credit. I think you guys had prophesized this and talked about this, I believe, more in the context of esports teams getting into creating games. But I think this is a very similar concept where it's all vertical integration. You have the most dominant form of marketing right now is Twitch and influencers. We saw that many examples of that, most famously with Apex Legends, where the influencers really helped build the game. And when I say build the game, I mean in the metaphorical sense, not actually build it. But clearly here you're getting the benefit of vertical integration. I still, if you're going to ask me like quick take, like yes or no, will this work? I'm going to say no, just because, we've seen time and time again, building video games is really hard. It's really hard. So I'm, maybe it's just an obvious answer, but my first take is like, this will not work.
I mean, there's no question that whatever game Doc comes out with, everyone's going to try it at least, right? Assuming it's free to play. Like there isn't a person on the planet that won't at least try it.
Yeah, and I think, even his comments about him having level design experience, do have some merit, right? He worked on Advanced Warfare back when that came out. And so he does have some sort of style and, fitting violence, speed, and momentum when you think about Advanced Warfare and the jetpacks that they introduced and, the kind of increased pace that it introduced. I think it kind of fits his brand, too. So maybe in a vertical style, I'm thinking it's going to be in a building or something. That's what I'm imagining. He keeps mentioning a vertical style of Battle Royale. So I'm imagining some sort of horror film where you're in a building, there's people on the 99th floor, people on the first floor, but you have to get to the other building, but the bridge is only on the 50th floor or something, some crazy nonsense. And with a lot of fast-paced, room-to-room, hallway designed shooting, which is a lot of what Advanced Warfare was. So I think with that in mind and the rise in popularity of games like Splitgate and kind of this revival of the arena shooter overall, I think it could have a lot of success, and he's not really risking anything. I think William brought up a really good point that, yeah, he could just play it off at the end of the day. If it's awful, it's kind of the equivalent of having a movie that goes bad. It's yeah, I did this thing, kind of sucked, whatever, move on, So that's my belief on it. And yeah, like Paul said, I don't think there's going to be a soul out there, especially if it's free to play, who's not going to want to try this sort of concept. Because the concept itself of vertical battle royale, that alone is enough for me to want to play the game. Just, that sounds frightening. So that sounds like fun.
Yeah, I mean, he says that he wants to make what influencers consider to be their dream game, right? So whatever influencers he's partnering with, whatever their dream game sounds like. Lindsay, you wanted to say something on this.
Right. Well, and I was going to add the nuance that I think it depends on how he fails. If he receives a lot of backlash, or if this actually damages his reputation. Because if he just makes a bad game and tries to kind of get it out there and says, it's my first shot at it and I had a lot of fun in this process, I learned a lot, it'll be fine. But if it's like a total shit game with terrible mechanics that never loads, that like a bunch of influencers are like 1,000 kills in 4 minutes, you won't believe this, then I think everyone's going to hate him. But there's a lot of ways he can fail and save face. It's just if he does fail the wrong way, he will not be able to.
There's
take
also
the
just a
backlash.
history of like many people have made not so great games, even influencers. And like, I mean, I'm thinking, sorry, maybe I'm overly critical, but didn't like the Penny Arcade guys do a game on the Rain's like Precipice of Darkness that wasn't that like not particularly good? I don't know. I remember playing it and kind of losing interest. I'm sorry, maybe people liked it but like there's history of this. And even game designers make bad games and it doesn't damage their reputation, right? Like literally, like think of who's the guy who made Black and White, and who am I thinking of? Jimmy, help me out here.
The DeepMind AI researcher, or like who are you talking about?
No.
Black and
Is it Sid Meier who did it? No, who did?
I don't think it was Sid Meier, but he did another. Who did Black and White? But I know the guy who did Black and White is a DeepMind researcher. It's the same guy who worked on the AI.
I don't know, but like I'm just thinking like there's plenty of game designers who've been known as auteurs, had bad games, and it hasn't impinged on their reputation. If anything, like we recognize that people make mistakes. So I think he can recover from this. But let's do new topics. I want to do more news because we got a ton of news to get through here.
Yeah. I will just say on the doc thing that maybe the worst scenario is he makes a great game, tons of people play it, and there are far better players than him at it. Imagine not being the champion at his own game. That his brand may not survive that. Wen says, first time catching the live stream. It's a bit late in the UK. Is this like an extension of the Beast Burger idea, where a mega influencer partners up with someone and uses the branding on top? So when first of all, thank you for showing up. I know it must be actually very late. So thank you for catching the live stream. But I think yes. I'm curious what you guys think, because just to be clear, in this article, it also mentions that he's partnering with Boom TV, right? And so it's not like the doc. I don't think the doc is going to be coding every level and doing, a lot of the day-to-day work on this. Clearly he's partnering with, a studio. They're hiring a creative director. I'm sure he will have lots of input. So I think it's probably more than just like the doc stamping his name on something, but I don't think it goes as far as like him running this day to day. Do you guys have a different sense?
Hopefully he'll be a little more involved than just stamping his name on a burger. But I think it's a great but I do think it's a great point by Wen, because it's a similar example of someone using, like, an influencer using their influence to sell product. But hopefully, for the doc's sake and probably for this game's sake, hopefully he's going to be more hands-on actually developing it. I doubt Mr. Beast had input into the type of burger and like the toppings and whatnot. But I could be wrong about that.
Probably was like, these are burgers I like. But I mean, guys, influencers have been making products for forever. I mean, like, literally, it's like the core of the influencer industry. Think of like how many, makeup influencers have their own makeup lines, or, fashion icons then do clothing. Like in some sense, this is like esports is a bit late to the party here,
Yeah, I mean, I think a good example is actually Beats by Dre. You look at it and you think about Dr. Dre kind of selling out. He's kind of lost his edge, and he's sold out, and he's made tons of money for subpar headphones that everybody likes because they're marketed well. That's just what they are. And so Dr. Disrespect could have that sort of reputation with this game. And I think the Boom TV integration is actually great, because I could think, like, they obviously pull a ton of stats with Boom TV. And so that sort of integration into a game, especially a battle royale, could be really good. Could be a lot of fun.
For the record, from a business standpoint, if you sell out for like $4 billion or whatever Beats was bought for, $2 billion, I don't remember.
Yeah,
it's the right kind of selling.
No,
out.
100%.
You don't care if people call you a sellout at that.
Yeah.
Point.
But even I
put
guess
a price on
it
it.
was the initial risk that he took to put his name on these headphones with Apple. But yeah, 100%.
Let's move on, guys. Let's talk about Google. This one was interesting. The headline here: Google allegedly considered buying Epic Games to silence antitrust complaints. So, everyone knows back in 2018, there was this spat over Fortnite on the Play Store. Obviously, the spat continued with Apple and everyone else. But Epic didn't want to pay the 30% cut to the Google Play Store. So they wanted to, let people sideload Fortnite on Android. it went, it became a legal battle. And one of the ways Google was considering resolving this legal battle was basically just to buy Epic. I love this story because it's one of these tin hat things where, we can put our tinfoil hats on and speculate what the world might be like had Google bought Epic Games. Does anyone have sort of a thought on how the world might be different today, how the gaming industry might be different today if in 2018 Google had managed to buy Epic? And second part of the question, if anyone wants to tackle it, is Epic potentially still up to be bought? Like, meaning, could it potentially still be an acquisition? They're not public, or are they too big at this point?
They could be bought. I mean, even public companies get bought by other public companies, right? I think they're an attractive acquisition, actually, to businesses of a certain size and scale. I think if you think of the big social Facebook, Google, Apple, I think all of those companies would be interesting acquirers of major game studios. I think Netflix would be, I don't know if Netflix has the market cap to do it, but I think they might be an interesting purchaser. Of course these guys can get bought. And there are businesses that might have real strategic impetus to buy them. That being said, I think it's unlikely they're bought at this stage, right? Like, we don't have really a track record of large game makers getting acquired. It seems pretty rare. If they are acquired, they're typically acquired. If game makers are acquired, they're typically acquired by other game makers, right? Who are trying to eat up the IP and consolidate. And Epic's too big to get bought by any other game maker out there. Even I think like the Activision Blizzards and things of the world, I don't think they would make a purchase there. So I think it's unlikely that they're acquired. But, I wouldn't be surprised to see headlines about it, because they're a very attractive asset with an interesting portfolio that would be very complementary.
The only way I think they would get bought is if there's some sort of reason why Tencent has to sell, and then it becomes Tencent owns whatever 40%, or have maybe, I don't know how much they own. Tim Sweeney is the majority shareholder, so he kind of holds the cards. He strikes me as someone who wants to go public and build an empire, and like, he's not necessarily looking to go work for Bobby Kotick or something. So I don't think he's personally a seller. But if Tencent, if the U.S. government or the Chinese government forces Tencent to divest that stake, that could lead to a sale. But yeah, I mean, this is, I come at this from the Stadia angle. Like, I think people are looking at this from the mobile, or at least this article seemed to phrase this in the mobile sense. But it would have been very interesting, and I think we would have a very different perception of Google's ambitions in gaming and Stadia's potential future if Google had plugged down, let's be honest, in 2018, they probably would have had to spend $15 billion probably.
That was Epic's valuation at the time. So
yeah,
argue
so
they
maybe
have to pay
20,
some
25.
premium. Yeah.
Now it's, they'd have to pay 60 or 75 billion, which is
40
massive.
or 50, maybe, probably.
Fair. I think 40 or 50 is what they're probably worth in an IPO. So if they're going to sell, it might even be more than that. But tomato. I think if this move happens in 2018 and they make Fortnite exclusive to Stadia, or really integrate that with Stadia, we might be having a very different conversation about Stadia, about Google's ambitions in gaming, and just the overall ecosystem. It would have been very interesting.
That, or they ruin Fortnite, they ruin gaming. Yeah. PUBG continues its path, Apex has an even bigger launch, right? We're assuming that they do well with Fortnite, which is a big if. But I liked everything else you said, Jeff. I was following it.
I mean, let me ask a different question here on this. Epic and Google here, like, one of the reasons Google was considering this is because, at least the way this article is framed, is they were worried about this legal battle, right? This antitrust complaint against Google. And antitrust complaints, historically for big, monolithic companies like Google, can be very damaging. They're not necessarily that easy to win. And so clearly, when you're looking at spending $20 billion to make a legal battle go away, you obviously are doing some math that says, this is a real potential risk to our business. Is anyone here surprised that Apple did not care, did not do that same math at all, right? Like, they were perfectly fine going to battle, whereas Google evidently considered a solution that would have cost them, like Jeff said, at least $20 billion at the time.
I'm kind of new to this, but doesn't that all depend on what type of resources you have? Because Apple does have the most liquid capital of any of these companies. So they have the cash on hand
Tomato,
to
tomato.
actually.
It's not like
Google
Google
Okay,
doesn't,
no,
right?
I'm-
Like,
No, I know, but it's different when you have it actually in liquid versus Apple, because Apple has never really pursued like a big acquisition type strategy. So they just have like piles of cash that they kind of sit with, whereas Google is constantly looking to expand, to grow. Not that Apple isn't, but Google has, I guess, a wider berth of interests. Like Apple is pretty focused. So for Apple, it's like, no, we're going to kind of stick with what we do. And Google's more like, well, maybe we can dig ourselves out by like just picking up another thing.
I mean,
So
it's a good
it
point,
just-
Lindsay. I think, but like Google being the $1 trillion company that it is, like even just raising 60 billion or 50 billion or for like getting access to that amount of capital, even if it's not sitting in a treasury like in cash, is really pretty easy for
I'm just
companies.
Does anyone
there's
else find it like
extra
ironic
blocks.
that in order to prove you're not a monopoly, you're basically like going out and squashing like a bug this little competitor? It's like, yeah, this is a great idea. Like this will prove that we're not an evil monopoly. Let's go kill this company.
That's what I mean.
Well,
Like,
not kill it. We're buying them. Come on,
Right.
it's so much
If
friendlier.
in that world where they buy Epic Games, then maybe that doesn't work out. They're like, we need to buy more studios, and then we live in a world where everything is cloud gaming and everyone's suffering and the world is in mass protest. It would be awful.
I like Jimmy M's, very, very negative view of this, very dystopian view.
It'd be very scary. I think.
I mean, there is a
Like
chance
Google.
that would have killed Stadia on the spot, though, right? I think Jimmy B's point was, you put a bunch of garbage with garbage, probably still end up with garbage.
And they
It would have killed
they give
Fortnite,
up.
not Stadia. Stadia was already dead. It would have killed
Right.
Fortnite.
But meaning, if you made Fortnite exclusive to Stadia, that probably would have also killed Fortnite, I would think.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought.
Right? Like if you go as far as to say, hey, the only place you can play Fortnite's on Stadia.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Unless you have any other thoughts on this, let's move on. I will say that this article is. I don't know if you guys want me to get into sort of the specific sort of things that came out of these leaked documents. But basically, a lot of it was that they just felt like Google Play could be far better off if Fortnite's on it, and to keep it on it, we may have to buy them. I think based on just the part of the leaked documents, Google was, maybe more than the legal battle itself, just most worried about the success of Google Play, which jives with the whole Apple battle, because
that's weird, because can't they just like then go, okay, we'll give you a lower royalty rate?
Yeah, then they have to do that for everyone else, though.
yeah, I think
Which is multiple billions.
But like, think about the alternate universe that we live in here. Like, which is worse? You have, first of all, I'm sure they have some scale plays or something, right? But the other piece is then, do they have to buy every developer that gets to a certain size? Like it just feels
slippery
weird.
slope.
Yeah, it just feels weird as a response. Like if the answer is, oh no, these people are so influential, we have to give them money to stick around, it feels like giving them a lower royalty rate is a lot easier than just buying them, Again, I mean, just,
It also almost proves their point that they're not a monopoly if they're in such a weak position that they have to do this and someone can go away from them. It almost like proves that they aren't actually a monopoly, because if they were, then Apple or Epic wouldn't even be thinking of leaving them. It wouldn't even be possible by definition if they were a monopoly.
yeah.
Let's move on, guys. I want to talk about Activision Blizzard, because this is a direct sort of follow-up from the conversation we had last week. If you guys remember, last week we discussed T-Mobile pulling out, and we were talking about possible implications, repercussions of that. Well, now we're starting to see it already, and I'll put two stories here up. The first one, again, staying out of the politics of it all, let's focus on the business side. Amid harassment lawsuit, advertisers pull back from Blizzard's Overwatch League. And this article says specifically, Coca-Cola, Kellogg, State Farm, and T-Mobile are reassessing their partnerships with Activision Blizzard's Overwatch League. So this is, I'm pretty sure, I don't think they have any other major sponsor. I'm pretty sure that is all their major sponsors, because I think Toyota had already pulled out. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. As I believe this is all of their major sponsors. And then adjacent to this, you have another article. This was a report, a rumor that Overwatch League is to go on potential year-long hiatus before Season 5. Now, in response to this article, the Overwatch League Vice President, John Spector, did come back to them and say, we're not... let me just read specifically. He says, "We have not set nor communicated dates about our 2022 season yet, but do not plan to take a year-long hiatus in any scenario we are considering currently." And then this site says, "However, we've received reports from multiple sources within Overwatch League regarding the hiatus." So sources are saying they're going to take a year-long hiatus. Activision's coming back saying, with, I think, very cleverly worded response, that they are not planning it in any scenario they are currently considering.
That's because they're planning. They're planning an 11-month hiatus internally. So this is completely like, what? We never said that. We never considered a year. It's 11 months or it's 13 months, but it's definitely not 12. Is all I learned from that.
I was going to say, the lawyer and you must appreciate this response.
There was hours of discussion on how to phrase this one sentence and put out. To me, what's particularly interesting is whatever clause, obviously, that all these sponsors are using to get out early. Obviously, there's a lot of reasons, but we had discussed a week or two ago about whether or not this will force Activision Blizzard to reconsider how they monetize their esports, right? How the charge for teams, and then what splits they do with these sponsors for their teams. But now what we're seeing is obviously social injustice that speaks and that advertisers are listening to, but also I think people that are reevaluating and saying, why would I spend money to go here when I could put that money in League or in some other game title? So to me, it wasn't like let's poke fun at Activision's troubles, because they have some stuff to figure out. I think we're also getting a lot of very savvy sponsors that maybe 5 years ago, investor sponsors, everyone, a lot of hype. Let me get into esports in whatever way I can. And now it's more sophisticated money. Where is this more actionable? Where should I reallocate this? Here's an opportunity to get out early. I'm going to take that, because even if I go back to Overwatch in 6 months or 11 months or 13 months or whatever, that timetable looks like, I could renegotiate a better deal for myself. So I'm actually applauding the advertisers here because they have a very strong bargaining position and they're taking advantage of it. And also sending a very powerful social message, which I probably should have started with, but this is a business show, so that's my defense.
No, and it's definitely it's an interesting sort of way to renegotiate a contract for sure. Now, Activision Blizzard, in this article, it says the rumors they're getting out of their sources is that Activision Blizzard is telling the teams that this hiatus is because Overwatch 2 isn't ready, right? And there are some rumors saying Overwatch 2 won't be ready. It won't even be ready in 2022. Like, that's how delayed Overwatch 2 potentially is.
I mean, they saw how great delaying GTA 6 was, right? So we should do that too. It's going to work for us too.
The thing is, I believe that it's not coming out in 22, 23, because when recently, I don't remember how recently, I think it was in April for the anniversary of the game, they released teasers of Overwatch 2, and all they released was the redesign of like Baptiste and like one other character, and that was it. They didn't tease anything else. And so a lot of people were left questioning, what is the state of the game? And then Jeff Kaplan left, and everyone was like, oh, okay, cool. Like,
Someone remembers, but at what point was Overwatch playable before it launched, right? Because I know there does seem to be a trend right now to basically just like dump finished games on the market, like, Valorant or, Apex Legends, or, just like, surprise, it's done, you can play it. But like, I mean, for Activision Blizzard, I mean, don't they have a history of demoing games live? Like, at least a year before launch, right?
So Overwatch 2 was playable at BlizzCon 2019, and so I got my hands-on experience with it, but they only allowed you to play one map, which was in Montreal, if I'm not wrong about that. You saw the new UI, or like what was the new UI at that point. But since then, and historically they release two rounds of beta, one closed to streamers and pros, and then one open to like fans that get emailed or whatever. And so that usually happens 6 to 8 months before the actual launch of the title. That's what it was for Overwatch 1 at least. So yeah, we had a playable build at BlizzCon 2019. However, earlier this year, when they had the opportunity to completely hype up their audience and sell this new game and be like, it's coming sometime soon, they absolutely dropped the ball. And so I'm super duper worried.
It may just be an excuse too, right? Like Overwatch 2 it really could be just because all the sponsors have left and they don't want to run this season. I mean, Lindsay, question for you specifically from a communications perspective. Like, is a year-long hiatus, right? Is this how you sort of hope that this negative news cycle disappears, right? Like, is that the strategy, the communicate, like internally, is this the crisis sort of strategy, right?
Well, and that might be part of the delay, because certainly if they announced Overwatch League is still coming in 2022 right now, everyone would kind of say, great, we don't care. So in a way, it's kind of inevitable, just because you don't want to come out and start talking about your new game amidst all of these problems. In another way, the confusion around it is not a great way of messaging. And I understand that it's incredibly difficult to set deadlines for these games, but even setting some sort of calendar for fans to look forward to any piece of the game would be a little bit more helpful. Like
all the negative news around Activision Blizzard right now, right? And the sponsors leaving and all, like this crisis of this sort of like of management crisis, right? Like where you have Activision Blizzard management doing some pretty bad things, right? Is Overwatch League potentially strategizing around a year-long hiatus because they're saying hopefully all the negative publicity around Activision Blizzard goes away, sponsors may come back in a year, right? It's all blown over.
Yeah.
Is my question to you specifically is disappearing the right strategy, or is it better to sort of just face this head on, say, you know what, sponsors have left, we get it, we're going to run this as usual, we're going to earn people's trust back, the fans back, whatever. Like where are you on that sort of strategy, crisis
disappearing
strategy?
Is way better. Yeah, disappearing is way better. Trying to launch and deal with these issues head on. First of all, anything you do is going to be underappreciated or unappreciated by some segment of the population that's just way too mad at you to see through any type of attempt to reach out. So disappearing, saying, hey, we're reevaluating some things. See you later. We'll be back. Like, that's a way safer strategy than trying to work out how you're going to save face right now. And so I think that for the league itself, like, that's much better. I think for Activision Blizzard, it's quite a shame how they've handled the Overwatch 2 launch, because this would have been the time to say, we are taking a step back to address other issues. Here's what you can look forward to. This is when the trailer will drop. In the meantime, like, we'll announce other initiatives that are way more important, or whatever it is. Like, there was a real chance at a good strategy for managing all three pieces of those between the Activision Blizzard PR crisis and Overwatch 2 and the league. Probably the league is doing it the best by just kind of staying out of it, not commenting.
I mean, I think you brought up like a good point. It might be better to disappear. And so, part of the Activision Blizzard crisis is they lost 3 extra game designers today, right? And one of them was the head of Diablo 4. And so with that news, on the same day, they actually did exactly what you were saying, Lindsay. For Diablo 2, here's when the first beta opens, here's when the second beta opens, here's when the third one. They dropped all that information today. They dropped in Act 1 and Act 2 of the game. They remastered the cinematics. They dropped those on YouTube today, too, and they were like, here, go check this out. And it's just like, felt so wrong at the same time as the same day the lead designer of
like I'm not supposed to be enjoying this.
Yeah, I didn't watch it because ethically I'm just like, oh, like what? Like, why now?
It feels a little like forced.
Right. Yeah, definitely forced. And it's like,
and who cares about no Diablo 4? Because you all have phones, right? Everyone has a phone.
They delayed Diablo Immortal as well, actually.
The meme that will never die. I got to read this comment. It's so specific. Ghost Rican says, and welcome. All I gotta say is, damn, who that sexy guy in the bottom left corner? I mean, it's none other than Jeff the Juice.
We just got juice. Ghost Rican.
Christian says, would a disappearance strategy work with Stadia to help bring it back? Christian.
They've been enacting that
excellent
strategy
question.
since they started.
Yeah.
In fact, they basically never appeared. So when it does drop, we'll all be surprised.
All jokes aside, because we can all joke that they never had an appearance strategy, but is there some way that Stadia could disappear and make a triumphant return? Better, fixed, more games, free.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, we just talked about it. If Google bought Epic Games,
Yeah.
like I'm quite serious. Like that's how you relaunch it. You say like Fortnite 2 exclusively on Stadia 2, right?
Yeah.
You have
Then
to start with like
we'd
a
be talking
phoenix.
about it.
You have to start with like a phoenix flying across the screen, right?
Yeah.
Then he flies into the Fortnite map, and then like I don't
See You
know.
again starts playing in the background. Like, I really think it's
Aerith
like
walks on from Final Fantasy and drops a Phoenix down on like you got.
I genuinely, I believe it's an infrastructure issue until Stadia could be great software wise, but we're not as a country ready for internet based anything. Our internet infrastructure is trash. New York's is garbage. We don't have enough providers. The wiring is doo-doo. We're so behind on a global scale in terms of internet and being able to get high-speed quality internet. It's pathetic. And until that's fixed, we're not going anywhere with anything cloud-based. So that's just, Stadia could get as good as it wants to, but
clearly Jimmy has been listening to me rail on internet infrastructure for the past year.
Before I dropped out of college, the one paper I wrote that was long, was about internet infrastructure and how poor it
and
is.
how bad it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, this is awful. And then I was like, well, time to cast some video games.
Yeah.
Let's move on, guys. I have kind of a fun story, a little more lighthearted. And this one's from Louis Vuitton primarily, but Burberry also. The headline here, Louis Vuitton and Burberry are diving into NFTs and online gaming. The luxury brands launch new mobile game, Louis the Game, and monogrammed character Sharky B. So I know specifically the Louis one was in celebration, I think, of the 200th anniversary of their original founder. And Jimmy B and Lindsay, I know you guys played it. I love the intersection of gaming and high fashion and fashion brands and these, fashion maison. And I'm always curious how well the integration actually happens. Do you guys have thoughts on how well this was done or not well at all? And is it effective, right? Does gaming translate to high fashion?
Lindsay, do you want to go first? I'm happy to talk at length.
Go for it. You go.
Are you sure? Okay. The game is really, really fun. I'm going to start with
Really?
that. I am really
fun.
enjoying it. It's like the music. The only other game that has better music is Fortnite. And Fortnite, if anyone here that plays it, Fortnite has great music. I don't know if you guys know that. It's a known thing. Fortnite has awesome music. In the lobby and the loading, and you can cycle different soundtracks. This Louis Vuitton mobile game has really awesome music. You run around with this cool little character who's shaped like one of their flower logos. He's wearing this awesome Louis Vuitton backpack that I want. You can collect accessories and put them on, like necklaces and different Louis Vuitton things. And I mean, if you're a brand, I don't want to say that word, but if you are really into high fashion,
if you're a brand,
but if you're really into high fashion, it's just everything that I have, or everything that you have or that you want in real life, you also want on your second world, your alternate world character that you live through. And Louis Vuitton game, I'm running around Paris right now collecting these candles, collecting accessories, listening to music, and I just have awesome things to say about it. I love that for my job I got to play that game and see if I liked it.
I was like, I'm not downloading this mobile game. Someone else play it so we can talk about it.
Who developed the game, Jimmy?
God, I know it's on Unreal, but I don't know who the developer was. Let me pull it up right now.
'Cause that's an interesting thing to know.
Yeah.
Like, if the game is that good, I'm curious to know because obviously it's they were paid to develop this. I'm guessing. I don't think
yeah.
it was an original pitch.
There's also interesting integration with NFTs. Jimmy, I don't know if you saw this in the article I read. Supposedly, you can collect 30 free NFTs as you follow the mascot's Vivian, and I guess you're following her to Paris. But like, you can collect 30 free NFTs. I don't know. Do you actually own them now? Like, are they in a wallet or something, like a crypto wallet? I'm curious. Were you guys able to get access to these NFTs?
I don't think I've gotten that far actually. I mean, I'm literally just jumping around this map, like collecting candles and Louis Vuitton accessories right now. So maybe I'll get there. Yeah.
I was under the impression that it was like 30 exclusive NFTs for people who found them first.
Oh.
It
So it's
says.
like
I mean, I don't know. I only know what I read in these articles. I haven't played the game.
Yeah,
But here's the
It's
question:
Ready
was it
Player One,
effective?
Jimmy. Find the code. You've got to do it.
Was it effective marketing for the brand? Did the game work? Because building a game, and a good game, which this is evidently, right, can't be cheap, couldn't have been quick, even if it's a mobile game, right? There was clearly some time and cost associated with this that was relatively significant. Now, LVMH is a massive company, and so they can afford that kind of marketing spend. But did you guys feel like it was effective? Did it create awareness of the brand? Like, is the game an effective medium for marketing of high fashion generally, I guess?
So I think, depending on who you are and where you market your product, you have different needs and different concerns, right? Whether or not there's a high enough click-through rate or installs or whatever. Certain brands, like you said, Louis Vuitton and their parent company, are more about just dominating brand awareness, right? Like, I think they care less. They don't care that they get 0 clicks that they can attribute on a billboard in Paris, right? Like, they want the billboard in Paris. That's their space. They're going to dominate it, as opposed to a smaller luxury goods, right? Which is going to come out with some kind of digital ad campaign, monitor their Google traffic, their Facebook ads, etc. Louis Vuitton already coming out with a League of Legends collab, the trophy, housing the trophies with their boxes, just like they do with the Stanley Cup and in other traditional sports, now coming out with a mobile game. I just love that they're all in on gaming to the point where they're even creating a mobile game where you're going to buy our goods in real life that are exclusive. You're going to watch as your favorite player gets awarded his trophy with our product. And when you're, goofing around in the airport or in class, you're going to be playing a game with our brand on it too. I mean, nothing but good things to say.
But it started simple, right? Like, it's simple. It's getting to be quite complex when you start making your own games, right? And that sets a pretty high bar for other high fashion houses and people doing integrations with games. The question is there a market now where we see, a lot of games coming that are like brand integrations? Or is LVMH truly one of the only ones that can do it? Jimmy?
I mean, I genuinely believe this is the start of, not the start of, but I think it's already been happening, but it's on the Unreal Engine. You already know what that means. Like, that's going to get integrated into Fortnite. It's going to be part of that universe. So, you already got cars.
Is there a day where we see a AAA game, like a real, like a shooter that's a legitimate game, esport, thousands of people, streamers are playing it, right? That's fundamentally like paid for by Louis Vuitton.
Well, doesn't this go back to the Dr. Disrespect conversation we were having, and sort of vertical integration in the space, and sponsors obviously like games and esports scenes, right? Like, is there is the question we're sort of asking, like, how far does the vertical integration go, right? Where we think the influencers can make it. What isn't the next logical step for the people who sponsor the influencers to just make it? So I think it's unlikely, there's scope of the firm, strategy stuff that you can look at for general business theory that sort of argue the limits of vertical integration and horizontal, integration, things like that. And I suspect it's unlikely, right? Like, if Coca-Cola, and the way I would phrase this to you is, let's say Louis Vuitton had an incredibly successful game developer in-house. Let's say Louis Vuitton owned Epic Games. I don't know, hypothetically. Don't you think that they would be under enormous pressure to divest that asset or spin it out as an independent company? because people would be saying there's just not, look guys, there's just not a lot of synergy. You can't have the CEO of a fashion brand running Epic Games. So I think it's unlikely that we see that true level of integration, right? That depth of vertical integration. But I think you could see rare exceptions, and you're seeing, in a lower cost development space by mobile people are willing to experiment.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the great initial cost, and it's like, I guess the advantage they have with working with Unreal Engine, and what I was getting at is the expansion of, maybe these companies and these large brands will just be sponsors for these large esports events that happen within the engine. You know what I mean? So say you're having not Fortnite, say it's a different game that's also developed in Unreal as an esport from the ground up, right? And that becomes the game that everyone plays as an esport. Louis now has access via the engine and just by, being introduced into that world to be like, hey, we want to sponsor this esport game that is in the engine. So it's not like we're developing it, but since we exist in this, in your universe, right? Maybe that's how they can attach themselves onto games and onto further projects. And I think, honestly, that's what we're going to see moving forward. And Fortnite is just like the first tip of the iceberg that we're seeing in that sort of direction.
What I'm curious for is, and maybe a great future guest for this podcast is, the marketing managers at LVMH, because they've been first movers in a lot of things. Like they did that fashion integration with League. Now you're telling me they did a good, I'd be really interesting to see. They are clearly trailblazing in many, I would say they are one of the, even before you told me, Jimmy, this was a good game, I would have said they're one of the best examples of a brand finding ways to integrate into esports, right? And doing it authentically and adding value and actually driving, sales of the core product and appeal of the core product. It'd be fascinating to hear from these guys.
I agree. And, it's one of these things where I think we're going to see, again, a little bit of like a ratcheting up of this war, right? Where we're at the stage now where entirely, and this is not just, total garbage. These are genuinely good games. I'm curious to see what comes next from LVMH, but also how other brands respond to this, because there's other brands that have the resources that LVMH does if they really wanted to make a great game. I got
really quick. Hold on.
What?
I just want to say, first of all, that there's a massive first mover advantage here because everyone's going to get tired of of downloading brands' apps to play games.
Even if the game's good, though? Even if the game's good?
If the game's good, it doesn't matter if you're on your 50th good game. Being the number one good game is way more important. It's just a free game, though, right? It doesn't matter. I would still rather go back to that one that I know and and already have played that's good than worry about the 50th game. I mean, it's like the Chick-fil-A app might be way better than the Wendy's app, but do I want to have 15 fast food apps downloaded on my phone
100%
just so I can order something?
Well, no. You do want Chick-fil-A over Wendy's, but otherwise the argument checks out.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like a little thumb in my shirt.
Yeah.
Okay?
There's app fatigue for everything. So there's a massive first mover advantage here, first of all. And second of all, I just want to really echo Jimmy's point that the music in it is fantastic. It's worth downloading for the music alone. I played it in my head to fall asleep. It's perfectly tranquil.
I got to get that soundtrack.
Right.
I got to get the soundtrack. I want to buy the stuff that I'm finding in game. I want my Fortnite character. I want my Valorant. I want all my characters to rock the same movie gear, and then I want to wear it in real life too. Vivian, it's so great.
All right, guys.
Super hyped.
I'm gonna move. I'm gonna read Pikarin's. Hey, Pika, good to see you. A comment. Everyone's a big fan of Jeff tonight. Says Ghost Recon spitting straight facts. That also agrees that the sexy guy in the bottom left corner. Jeff, you got a lot of fans. It's the juice.
Thank you, guys.
Everyone wants the juice. All right, let's move on. Just a quick, actually, before we get to our next story, let's do this. For those of you who don't know, the Business of Esports is supported by YouGov. YouGov's a leading international research firm. They supply the best data on gamers, games, esports fans around the world. They have a ton of free data, research, reports. And if you work in gaming, if you're in and around gaming, if you're looking at gaming, you're interested in gaming, you're at all affected by the gaming audience, you definitely need to be talking to the folks at YouGov. So go check out yougov.com/gaming-esports. I'll put it in the chat. But we do have a little YouGov Insights segment this week. We got some interesting data specifically around esports betting and gambling online as it relates to esports and gaming. And so I have a few slides here. I'm just putting the link in the chat, but I've got a few slides here that I thought was very interesting data, and curious to get everyone's thoughts on this. So let me share the first one here. All right, can everyone see this? Let me see if I can make this a bit bigger. All right. So the chart here basically says this is they're polling online gamblers, right? So these are people who gamble online to begin with. And they asked them, you previously said that you've gambled online for money in the past 12 months. Which, if any of the following, have you done? Okay. And then the percentage of respondents are listed here. What's interesting, number 1, lottery draw game. Number 2, with 36%, placed a sports bet online. If you look at esports betting specifically, only 7% of online gamblers have said they bet on esports online. Is anyone? I'm surprised at this. It's a relatively low number.
That's not bad when you're talking about the next one next to it's
Exactly.
fantasy sports. Like
Yeah, that's what I was
fantasy
going to say.
Fantasy sports is quite
incredible.
a multi-billion-dollar industry, which so is obviously esports betting. So that's
But doesn't
pretty
it speak
interesting.
to the
I'm most
potential,
curious,
Jeff?
just as an aside, I like how they have financial betting on there. Which one? What is that? That just seems it's basically just Robinhood day trading. Like
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting. But yeah, I don't know. That caught my eye.
But doesn't it speak to the massive opportunity around esports betting at how many more gamblers you can convert?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think it's great data. I was taking more of a positive spin on the current. I think you were taking it as 7% is pretty low, and that shows there's so much opportunity for growth, which on one hand is true, but I like Jimmy's initial take was, wow, it's the same as fantasy sports, which I think most people would have the perception that fantasy sports was a much bigger market than esports betting. So I think that's pretty cool.
Anyone else have thoughts or insights on this? I can move on to our next one.
No, I echo Jeff's sentiment. 7% only for fantasy sports betting. I personally feel like I know that 7%, like in my own personal circles. I thought that would be way bigger, but knowing how big that is and seeing that is what online esports betting is at, that's really impressive. And yeah,
just going down the line, playing online poker. I mean, poker is a massive, and only 10%. Like, you're 3% off from online.
Keep in mind,
poker,
this is all age groups, all demographics, all countries, right? So obviously some are going to be bigger in certain demographics, certain age groups, right? This is the entire, call it, online gambling audience. You're right. In that context, it is quite a big number.
That plays even more heavily in esports favor, because think about percentage of poker players who are old enough to bet on poker, right? Like, probably pretty significant. Esports is a relatively young audience that's aging all the time. That itself is just inherent growth here.
Let me put up the second one here, guys. So this
wait.
Oh,
Can
what?
before you
Go
do
ahead,
that,
Nancy.
I just have a quick question for Jeff. I wanted to know, like, since you've been working on this, what the regulatory barriers are like, and if there's other countries where it's just been easier, and if that's why you think, because this is globally, so that 7% number could be high in places where there's not as many of those. Yeah,
and Wen brought up that point in sort of the comments here around fantasy sports betting being really, because sports betting has only been legalized in the last few years. Fantasy sports is kind of a U.S. phenomenon to some extent. Mm-hmm. But to answer your question more specifically, Lindsay, I mean, the regulations here in the U.S. are very nascent. Obviously, us at Esports Entertainment Group, we're still going through the process, and we'll be the first kind of esports focused sports book with a license in the U.S. So you can tell it's obviously very nascent. Globally, it's much bigger, particularly in like the Nordic regions. Latin America has a really mature esports betting market. So you are correct.
And Wen also says poker being 10% and being crazy popular, especially in the pandemic, is interesting. Yeah. I mean, that's still a large number, right? Like if you're talking about the online gambling audience as a whole, 10% of that is still a huge number of just people. And Wen says, I think fantasy sports betting outside the US might be smaller. Yeah. And Jeff, I think, addressed that. It is definitely smaller outside the US. Let me bring up the second one here, guys. This second one is, it's talking about secondary motivators. So let me just read it. It says, when it comes to secondary motivators such as social aspects and the perceived ability to make money, these drivers are far more important among players of games of skill and other emerging gaming types such as financial betting, esports gambling, and fantasy sports. Okay, so what they asked here, they polled all online gamblers, and they said, which, if any, of the following have you done? And which of the following motivates you to participate in gambling for money online? Okay, and the two possible answers here were to talk about with family and friends, and it's a reliable way to make money. So when you look at this, right, and you look at where esports sort of figures, what this says is being able to talk about this with family and friends was the secondary motivator, right? Was one of the motivations for 29% of people who are doing esports betting online. And for 25%, it was that they felt it was a reliable way to make money, that was a big part of the motivation. And you can see esports is quite a bit higher with these secondary motivators than just about any other form of gambling. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on this. Takeaways? Jeff, Jimmy, go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Jeff.
No.
My takeaway is, the audience that's participating in esports betting, right, as a way to make money, to talk about it with family and friends. Just a younger, agile, willing to take risks audience, right? That's going to invest in crypto. That's interested in NFTs. That's not putting their money in stocks, right? They're trying to do something different, do something that aligns with their passions in our industry or another. I don't know if that's how you guys interpret this as well, and I'm interested to hear differing viewpoints, but I just see it was kind of similar to a YouGov Insight we did about a month ago with the audience being so much more likely to purchase online as opposed to the NFL and NBA audiences, if you guys remember. Not a direct parallel, I know, but I just see, again, we saw 7% on the previous one, but here in terms of people talking about it and willing to do it, that's awesome, right? That means it's ripe for opportunity, and I definitely want to hear from Jeff and EEG on this one.
Yeah, like one of the big things for me here, and I sort of started with the conclusion at the top, right? But it seems that the three sort of most, call it, cutting edge forms of gambling, right? Financial betting, esports, and fantasy sports. These motivators have a much higher impact, right? Being able to talk about it with friends and it feeling like a reliable way to make money seems like a much more powerful driver for these newer forms of gambling. Jeff, you're smiling.
I am smiling. I'm just so happy with this data. I love it. I think it's so insightful. I echo what Jimmy said. I think he said he hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, I think the problem with data is it's almost too good. It speaks for itself. Like the insight is pretty obvious here.
Yeah,
which is cool.
Yeah, like if you're going to bet on areas of growth, right? These three seem to be, sort of head and shoulders above many of the others here. Yep. All right, let me open the third here, guys. We've got two more here. This one is talking about. Actually, this is the same. Hang on, sorry. 1 second. All right, this talks about age groups. So let me bring this up because I think this will shine an interesting light on some of the discussion we just had. And here, so again, I'll start with the conclusion. When broken down by products, younger cohorts skew towards the type of games where skill is at least part of the appeal. In particular, fantasy games, casino card games, and esports. Products where skill is very much a part of the culture. So in other words, the younger that you are, the more you enjoy or think that a big part of the appeal is skill. And here again, they're talking to all online gamblers, but they've broken it down by age. Okay, and if you look at esports, for example, 10% of 18 to 24 have done it, but 12% of 25 to 34 have done it versus only 5% of 35 plus. Whereas you see casino, for example, skewing at least higher in that older age group, right? That these are the types of games that are more popular with younger gamblers, whereas the less skill-based games, so like online lottery draw, online lottery instant win, where 47% of 35 plus have done it, or 24% of 35 plus have done lottery instant win. So in other words, the 4 types of skill-based betting games, like esports, financial betting, where skill gives you a perceived advantage, is much, much more popular with younger gamblers. Is this just so great, deadly obvious to everyone?
I mean, this is something I literally would want to use for a slide for EEG, because I think it's kind of speaks to what we're trying to do with FanDuel and, you know, also with Vi, with esports betting. I mean,
right.
You know, part of me wants to make a joke that the young people haven't realized that they have no skill, so that's why they're so attracted to these skill games. Whereas you got the old veterans who are grizzled and realize they have no skill, so they're just sitting at the slot machines, you know, letting Lady Luck, you know, take them away. But it's great data. I mean, this is great insights.
And I think
like they're inversed, right? Like literally, right. It goes like all the skill-based games. It drops off as it gets older versus the non-skill games. It increases as it gets older, right?
I think it just
deadly obvious.
The larger sentiment of media just becoming more and more interactive, right? And that's the way it's going to continue to be consumed moving forward. And so I think this generation just wants to interact with media more and more. And if they can make money while doing it in a more fun fashion, then I think it completely makes sense. And
but is there a hidden variable, Jimmy, to like Jeff's point, which is like, if you're younger, you have more confidence in yourself. You think your skill is what, you know, and the older you are, sort of the more you realize gambling are games of chance, and because you're just savvier.
I think the older gamblers are people who are kind of stead in their ways. You know what I mean? They're not looking to change from what they know as gambling because they've kind of figured out the lay of the land. You know, if I do this certain thing, if I eat a breadstick on a Sunday, then the ticket's always hitting. You know what I mean? Like, there's no disputing that logic. But these youngins playing these games.
Is that how it works? Do I need to go eat breadsticks on Sunday?
On a Sunday, hey man, if you'll never know unless you try it.
Jimmy,
you know what I
thanks
mean?
for the tip, man.
That's what I'm saying, man. Any day. But yeah, I think like they're less willing to try these new forms of gambling where they have to use some form of their own skill because they're like, oh wait, no, I'm just gonna feel outclassed.
It's almost the inverse relationship. If skill is required and you don't have the skill, right, because you're not really doing the activity at all, why should you enter or entertain that aspect of, because you know you're not going to do well, you know?
Exactly, right.
What particularly fascinating with this last slide to me is how closely financial betting and esports seems to parallel right now, right? Like it's maybe a closer parallel to esports betting than just about any other kind of gambling, which I also think is a fascinating takeaway. Like from a pure data standpoint, if you want to understand esports betting, maybe we should be studying the Robinhood audience more than like the slot machine audience. Cam says, Jimmy M crying happy tears. That's great info. Love you, Gov. Cam, thank you. As always, showing love to our great supporters and sponsors. And Six Cannon says, it's the juice. Everyone loves the juice. So guys, just to wrap that up, because this was, we thank you, Gov, for all the data they give us. And usually we get a little sneak peek at all these reports, but you can find so much more of this data and so much more of their expertise, either if you reach out to them, anywhere on social, on LinkedIn, anyone at YouGov to help you out, or go to yougov.com/gaming-esports. I'll put the link one more time, but definitely show them some love as they are tremendous supporters of the live stream. All right, guys, let's move on. Let's get to I think we have 2 more topics to get through here. And this one's here for Jeff, really, because, Jeff had put this, we have, I think it was Jimmy, you mentioned the Discord where we talk about things we want to discuss on the live stream. And Jeff, I want to know what you took issue with in all this, but the article really was Enthusiast Gaming and their, no, not this, sorry. Enthusiast Gaming and their latest second quarter results. Now, I couldn't find the exact link you had shared, the little headline you had shared. But at first glance, these results seem strong.
It was,
so what was the issue you had?
Well, the headline was what the issue was. So we got to find the headline. I'll find the headline. It was from the Esports Observer, and the headline was Esports Enthusiast Gaming reports $10 million net loss, little revenue contribution from esports assets.
Okay.
And it was just like, I don't know, it was a very off-putting headline to me where, they're quoting a gap, net income number that pretty much nobody looks at. Everyone's looking at adjusted numbers and sort of EBITDA. And Enthusiast is also a company that's pretty early in their life cycle. They're investing. So like very few investors are looking at this company on a net, certainly not on an EPS net income basis. And they put up a really strong quarter. I mean, they beat all analyst estimates. They had a very strong quarter on direct advertising sales coming in. I think it was their best quarter they've ever had. And they sort of throw in this jab of very little contribution from their esports assets, which is like, okay, I'm not entirely sure like what value that brings to the article. Besides, it felt to me like it was a little bit of like a, hey, we're the Esports Observer and we're sort of like the gatekeepers for what is esports and it kind of goes back to what we talked about, when people had a lot of comments when we did that list of the top 10.
Yeah, I was just going to say
esports companies or esports, whatever properties. And people were like, well, Enthusiast isn't an esports company. They're a gaming company. And I just felt a little bit of that in this headline where it was like them trying to gatekeep, like, oh, well, they're not even really an esports company. Only 4% of their revenue came from their quote unquote esports assets. And it's just like, I don't know. I didn't love the tone because I really like the Enthusiast guys. And I think they had a great quarter. Disclosure, I am a shareholder of Enthusiast Gaming. But I didn't love I didn't think the headline was warranted with the quarter that they had, which I thought, and I talked to a couple of investor friends of mine today that all agreed that it was a good quarter. And I think Adrian and the team over there are executing really well. So,
yeah, it's one of these things where, first of all, first learning, if you're going to the Esports Observer or Esports Insider for like business insight on the industry, you're doing it wrong. You're just doing it wrong. It's not the place to go. But having said that, it's one of these things where it comes down to this strict definition of esports, right? And I think a lot of people like to hold on to this strict definition of esports being, people watching on a stage and an audience in a stadium. And I just think it only continues to hurt the industry because you get headlines like that, right? Which are just categorically wrong. This is a gaming company that is executing well. Whether we call it gaming or esports doesn't matter at all, right? They mean the same thing. And frankly, even Luminosity, even their gaming, if they're pure esports division, still the most watched team on Twitter, right? Yes, it's because of XQC, but even they're killing it just from a, data perspective. To me, it has to end sort of this separation between gaming and esports. It's totally artificial, and I think it doesn't make sense. It never has.
And even just if they said their esports assets were 4% of revenue, they did 40 million in revenue. 4 or 5% of that is what, $2 million? Like a $2 million quarter for an esports team. That's pretty good, actually. Like shockingly,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's almost a $10 million run rate.
I'm intrigued too if there were other people either in the company or like that communicated that to Esports Observer that like, hey, this is a really bad headline, because I'm looking for it too and I don't find it anywhere. And I'm not like, I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled it because someone was like, this is really misleading.
Could be.
Like maybe.
it's also just odd when someone when it, sorry, I'm like ranting now. It's like
No,
these are supposed to be industry press sort of. They're supposed to be
The
like
juice
industry
is
press
corner.
sort of like they should be supporting companies that are doing well, public companies in the industry, and it's like to have the headline be about their losses when it's like it's just a weird way to describe a company.
100%, yeah.
It's like there's plenty of companies out there that are public that are losing money that like the headline isn't typically like, hey, like Coinbase reported today like a $3 billion loss. Like, suck it, Coinbase. Like, you got juiced. It's like, no, you report the positive typically. I don't know. It's just, it was inflammatory in it for no reason.
William, you were going to say something. I don't know.
No, I was going to make a juice joke, but I made so many of them earlier. I have to stop myself. It's not funny for anyone except for me.
Do we want to talk about Candy Crush at all? Because they reported also. That was
I do.
that's an
Blizzard,
interesting one because it was we sort of ragged on Activision Blizzard the last couple of weeks. I think this was one of the bright spots. And so the headline here was Candy Crush owner forecasts upbeat quarterly revenue even as gaming slows down. And so basically Candy Crush exceeded analyst estimates. Well, not Candy Crush, but that specific division,
does it
I guess.
say something about the who's writing this article and who their audience is that they're calling Activision Blizzard, quote, Candy Crush owner? Like that's their description for Candy Crush owner.
I mean, it's
like,
Reuters.
Okay, like, that's
it's
who they're
Reuters.
talking, you know what I mean? Like it's just so funny to I just throw that.
Well, how
out
do you
there.
want to refer to them?
No, I just think it's interesting. Like, we personally would not probably call Activision Blizzard the Candy Crush owner. They are.
Well,
obviously, but like
when
it's
that's
just,
when that's the bright spot, is that not basically how you refer to the business at that point? I mean, no, seriously though, right? Like if Candy Crush
Maybe
is
there's
generating.
Maybe there's more pull to the headline if ABK was mentioned. That's what I would think. That you would mention this giant multi-billion-dollar company doing well now too with their Candy Crush game. That's what I would imagine. I'm right there.
I was
with
just
that.
saying
That's a
because
little
Reuters is talking to a much broader audience,
It's
and that broader
usually
audience
at least-
knows Candy Crush, not Call of Duty. Which that was sort of the point I was going at.
Having said that, again, it's like if your best business is Candy Crush, right? And I'm not saying it is because I think Call of Duty still is, right? But if Candy Crush is your second best business, there's nothing wrong with being Candy Crush owner, right? I definitely wouldn't be saying Overwatch owner, Activision Blizzard, right? Like
Here's
that.
the Storm owner.
That would be sort of a shot across the bow. But I mean, who here thinks Candy Crush may end up being, and King, I guess in general, may be the thing that sort of supports Activision Blizzard through all of the negative PR they're getting, right? Because the mobile game is not nearly as affected, right? Like Call of Duty has taken a hit, Warzone has taken a hit.
Well, there's just a completely different culture around mobile gaming too that plays way more into Activision Blizzard's favor. Like if a major King developer left, I don't know that there would be the same reaction as when Jeff Kaplan left Blizzard. Like there's just there's not as much lore, I guess might be a good word, surrounding what's happening on their mobile side, and they just have a bunch of really successful popular games with a lot of groups and a lot of demographics. So absolutely, I think this will continue to shine amidst all of the problems.
Like in some ways, is mobile gaming just broadly then more whatever proof? Like it's just, you can lose people, it's not so bad. You can have scandal, it's not so bad. You can have, right? Like it holds up a lot better.
In general, I would say that it's just a bit, it's shallower and farther reaching. I think that there's a lot more backstory built into games that people spend 50 hours with their sole attention focused on it than there is in a game that you play on your phone when you're on the metro. That doesn't mean that you can't be equally passionate or equally talented at them, but I think that passion comes less from a place of wanting to be inside of the game and more just wanting it to be a fun thing to do with your time. I think the motivations behind play are completely different, which in some ways is worse because you can't, it's less likely that you're going to develop something that's really cultural and passionate and anchoring, but in some ways it's better because you're appealing to a wide range audience that isn't going to get so much into who exactly is developing it or why.
Yeah, right. Less detached, more passive. 100. Yeah, it's a completely different type of gaming.
I just want to remind our audience, deep discussion and analysis of mobile gaming last week. Chief Pat, CEO of Tribe Gaming. If you haven't listened to the episode, we do talk quite a bit about this. I love Lindsay's point about it being wider reaching. Pat talked to the global scale, how that affects his sponsors and his viewership, etc. So check out the episode.
I thought you were going to say deep discussion of mobile esports, Paul's favorite topic.
It was awesome.
We did. It was a good episode.
So I was actually going to bring this up earlier when we were talking about Activision, but the moment sort of passed. I was actually having a conversation with my friend yesterday, who's an investor, and he was pitching me like ardently on Activision, saying, "Hey, you got to buy it." He thinks the stock's $120, and the main reason why he thinks that is because he thinks that investors are undervaluing or not appreciating the earnings power in King, particularly on the advertising side. They last call they just mentioned that they're now at a $300 million run rate on the advertising business, and he thinks, in quote unquote his model, that that's worth 50 cents of EPS that the quote unquote street is not appreciating. So just throwing that out there. He is a smart investor. I mean, he used to work at a fund that was a top 5 shareholder of Activision. So he definitely is
disclaimer. This is not investment advice.
Yes, this is juice, not investment advice. But he is a very smart investor, and I will probably listen to his advice and buy some Activision based on that.
Do your own research. Consult with an investment advisor.
Yeah, if you're getting your investment advice from a podcast from a guy named The Juice, you're doing it wrong.
It may or may not be very good advice. I just still consult with an investment advisor. Do your own research. This is not. We're not selling stock here. This is not. I'm sure Jimmy can fill in the boilerplate legal disclaimer
sure
here. I mean, Jeff, just on that point though, like at some point, right? At some point, Activision Blizzard becomes maybe a much more heavily weighted mobile business as a consequence, right? And I think if I give Bobby Kotick any credit as a capital allocator, he must know this, right? He must see the writing on the wall, and I'm sure his interest would be into shifting the business more towards mobile revenue. I'm surprised the ad revenue is as strong as you say it is in the context of all of the tracking changes that have happened on iOS specifically, right? Around IDFA and like not being able to track users across apps and things like that. I'm surprised it has stayed that strong. I don't know if the changes are built into that number.
I think it's a thing where it's been a business that's been growing for so long. They just have so many players. Like Candy Crush has, I'm going to say the wrong number, but it's like 400 million monthly active players or something like that. So, the scale is just so big that they're able to, weather sort of the IDFA storm to some extent. And I do think your point about them moving heavily into mobile is something that's underappreciated and is something that Bobby deserves credit for. One, the King acquisition was an absolute steal. I mean, they bought it for, I think, 6 times EBITDA in 2015. I mean, if King was a standalone business right now with the multiples that you see for like AppLovin, Zynga, I mean, Playtika, it's probably a $25 billion company. They bought it for 5. And what they did with Call of Duty Mobile, I mean, nobody thought that was going to be anything. And now it's $1 billion game. And I imagine having like pretty incredible margins based on it being a mobile game and an owned IP. So, we laugh at Warcraft Mobile, but who knows? Maybe that's sort of where they head with Warcraft and they bring people in and sort of engage the base that way. I can feel you probably rolling your eyes or trying not to roll your eyes, Paul, but you never know. Like they've sort of executed on that strategy.
Look, and the stock took a hit because of all the bad news, right? But the underlying, again, this is why mobile is interesting to me from a business standpoint, because it seems immune to the sort of just the social backlash that the company has taken, right? Like other things have suffered. Warzone has suffered. WoW has suffered, like unrelated, just because WoW's old. But mobile, like the whole Candy Crush article, still, Candy Crush still performing well seems just, impressive to me, right? That any part of the business basically has weathered a lot of this negative press and come out, on top. Wen says, I'm all in Activision. Thanks for the juice. Have to get to sleep, but this is great to catch live. Have a great rest of the podcast. One of the only podcasts I still get to consistently. Wen, thank you so much. Again, not investment advice. Should Activision Blizzard stock drop, you can reach the juice at
the juice at esportsentertainmentgroup.com.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to put him into witness protection after a couple of episodes.
But John says, I'm gonna. But Wen, thank you, by the way, for the kind words and for listening to the podcast. We really appreciate you coming. John says, I'm gonna teach Paul how to play Wild Rift and change his world. John, it might happen when hell may freeze over first, but there's a chance that I play Wild Rift. I sort of appreciate League, but not enough to play it, and so mobile League it's a bit of a stretch. It would be a bit of a stretch. Since everyone's asking about gaming, let's end with our most loved segment. What are we playing this week? And there was a question directly at me, so I'll start this week. Pigerin says, Paul, are you grinding that Phoenix for the tourney? Grinding that Phoenix. Probably not grinding, but I don't need to. I'm just so naturally skilled and talented. I have like 30 years of grinding behind me. I just don't need to grind that much anymore. I know Jimmy M looking at me, but there's so much natural skill built into these hands, right? Just so much natural ability.
The bot does so much the aiming for him is what he really
I think Jimmy M heard me yesterday, and just by the way, so for those who don't know, it's a bit of an inside joke. We are Jimmy M and I are playing in a Valorant tournament, and we're going to create fun content around it. We're team retirement home. It's going to be my last hurrah at esports glory. And I'm bringing what I like to call God-given natural aim assist to the party. And so I don't need to do that much grinding. But Picarin, thank you for asking. And Ghost Regan says Paul should be playing Valorant for the tournament. Everyone thinks I should be practicing. I thank you guys, but I don't have time. So it's gonna be what it's gonna be. Lindsay, what are you playing this week?
Straight W's the whole way
Louis
through.
Vuitton game.
I love it.
I've been
that
playing
good,
it.
hey?
It's
I'm tempted to
really
download
good.
it. I'm tempted.
It's really good. I'm very impressed.
Just
This
like
is
to
why
point
I
out,
think that
Paul's
other brands have a
never
hard time following.
ever planted the spike in Valorant because he doesn't need to. Aces every time.
Aces every time. Jimmy B.
Yeah, my squad and I have been playing Apex, and we're really enjoying it. We got a triple dubs back to back over the weekend, which was a lot of fun. Unranked, so take that for what it is. But we're going to start ranked this week. We're starting ranked. Though I actually, after today's guest, I already installed Splitgate, so I'm going to be checking that out too and seeing how that goes. But I'm going to pick your brain tomorrow, Paul, about who I should be playing with in Apex and your favorite loadouts and stuff. I'm having so much fun with it. I'm so happy I left Call of Duty, and I will end on that.
It is the better game. It's way better than Warzone. It's way better.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff?
I did not play anything. But I did save a ton of money by switching to
Right.
car insurance.
Juice yourself.
Right. There's been so many moments where I just feel like Jeff is like 1 second behind a little bit, and then he comes back in and he's like, "Hey, how's that now?"
No, video games. I don't really play those.
Yeah, I don't even like video games.
I'm playing.
What am I doing here?
I'm playing a lot of stuff, guys. A lot of stuff. Still Demon Souls remake. Finished the first loop on the second loop, the NG Plus, to get all the spells. So, doing that. I've been playing Ratchet and Clank, Ripped Apart. Just excellent. Just really, really, really excellent game. Probably my favorite game on the PS5, which is saying something. Been just about to, like, I started and then stopped, but I will play the Final Fantasy interlude because, like, FF7's got to be a thing. So I'm working through a bunch of single player content, basically, which is maybe well deserved because I have not played. I don't think I played much of any single player games for a while, maybe other than Hades last year. That was like it. So it's kind of interesting to go back to a single player game and experience that world for a little bit. But yeah, and I mean, obviously, Heroes of the Storm. I mean, like, let's be honest, that's all my true love.
William, the episode you were not on last week, ironically enough, he was a huge Heroes of the Storm fan.
It's
and
true
player.
what they say,
Like,
Paul.
you-
Highlander, there can only be one. There's just that's what it is.
I'm like,
By the way-
thank God William was not on this one episode. He was not on because it just would have been half an hour of back and forth on Heroes of the Storm.
In disguise. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
There you go.
I would
what I
have been like,
found
how
out
do you,
this week?
are you specking Arthas, bro? What's up with that? You go Cindergrosa on 10? What's up?
William showed up just in a wig and a mustache, so he could talk about how good HOTS is just under a
It's
different.
a brilliant game, guys. I'm not kidding. It's a brilliant game.
Jimmy M.
Wait, Jeff, what were you saying?
I was gonna say just a brief aside. I didn't. Maybe you guys all knew this, but I didn't know this. Hades was published by Take-Two. Did you guys know this?
Didn't know this.
By their private division.
Interesting.
Thought that was it. I thought that
It was a big
interesting.
success. It was
Yeah.
Huge.
as indie games go. Jimmy M.
Yeah, Valorant. Haha, surprise. Week after
Well,
week.
at least someone's playing.
Yeah, I hit the highest rank that I've ever been in the game this past week. So
What rank
called-
is that?
Well, that's
It's
good.
called
You're not getting
Immortal.
worse. I mean, I would hope you're getting better. Like,
right, me too. I was
that-
like, God, please
that
don't let me
obvious?
be washed up already. Like, no, I hit Immortal, and then above that is pretty much another rank, which is called Radiant, which is just the top 500 people in your region. So I'm pretty comfortable where I'm at. I'm like, okay, those are the people getting paid. I'm like right below them. That's perfect. So
Who do
get
you
ready.
play with?
Who do I play with? I'm either
Yeah.
a Jet main or a Reyna main. I'm a
Respect.
filthy,
Oh,
filthy
Jet's
boy.
so fun.
She's so fun. She's so
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
I feel like Naruto.
That
every time.
mobility.
I'm such an
so
idiot
good.
that when you asked who do you play with, I thought you meant like what friend. Like he was gonna be like, oh, Carl, like Carl and John.
Tony down the block.
Cam says, "Oh, nice guys. That's awesome. If you need a Spike Rush level Omen, let me know." Cam, we would. It's a local tournament in New York, though, so it's a LAN, it's live, which is why we're going to make content
Hot
there.
tip though, Omen, teleport, enemy spawn, they never know. It's just that's how I ground all my maps.
Pro
wins,
level
literally.
strats.
Pro level strats.
Where's the tournament? You got to tell all the fans they'll come. Or maybe you don't want to tell. Maybe we'll do it. You can tell me
Fans and the
offline.
stalkers. Yeah.
We don't want We don't want all the Profits fans to show up looking for autographs.
It's just too many. Raymond says, when Val scrims. Ray. Cam says, trying to keep on this Warzone grind, quickly losing squad mates to all the cheaters. We all installed Apex today. It's the better game, Cam.
It's the wave.
And so, even cheating aside, it's still the better game. Even if Warzone had no cheaters, it would still
So
be
much
the better
fun.
game.
It's so good.
And Cam says, hot stream when.
Please.
we
You guys,
well, we
you gotta
now know
ask
2 people
Paul
who
that.
play it. So we just need a few more
You gotta
podcast
ask
guests.
Paul, I will stream HOTS anytime, and I'll call all the shots. I'll be like, guys, camp on 45, camp on 45. Here we go. Come on, rotate. Objectives up.
What's
Objectives up.
45?
I don't even know. It just seems like when the camp would be on.
Guys, on that note, that ends this week's live stream. Just a reminder, we do this every Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. So tell your friends, tell your family, bring your colleagues, get everyone in. It's a lot more fun when you guys participate. And and if you haven't already, I'm trying to ignore the chat. Cam says, I will stream HOTS anytime. You said this during the first stream, William. He's not going to give up on that, Cam. I promise you. Will not give up on the hot stream. Enrique
Cam,
says, don't
we
worry.
missed
I'll
you.
bring the pom-pom, the Prophet hoodie, and socks you gave me. There you go. This is all we need is a cheerleading group to win. Also, don't forget, guys, businessofesports.shop. You can pick up socks, hoodies, and fun Business of Esports merch like Ghost Recon. If you don't have any, we really appreciate it. It helps support the podcast. Go show YouGov some love. And as always, guys, we will see you next week.